Hi, I'm Dave Epstein, and welcome to this edition of Growing Wisdom. Today we're at a local grower here in Massachusetts, and we're showing you how they grow poinsettias. I'm here with Glenn Harrison. Let's take a look. So Glenn, a lot of folks may not realize that the poinsettias they get, especially in New England, but it's the same thing in all parts of the country, there's just different growers, are grown, hopefully locally, and then shipped so that folks can go to their local retailer and buy these plants.
Absolutely. Anything that you would get in New England would be produced in New England. So it's not as though it's going to be coming from outside the country or anything like that. You're more than likely going to get something. If you're in Massachusetts, you're going to get it from a Massachusetts grower or from a neighboring state, maybe Connecticut, something like that.
So tell me about the poinsettia plant. You know, people get these and they love them, and they think first of all that the red, the pink, the white is the flower, and it's not. So let's start there.
Well, that's actually an important distinction. Really, the color that you see on the plant, the red bracts, are actually a modified leaf. The flower itself is just this little sentinel part that hardly anybody ever notices. This is actually just a little bit different from the green leaf, and it's just the way that it ends up flowering in the end.
So this is called the bract, that's the colored portion, and the flower is that tiny little piece in the middle. So if someone brings one of these home or they get it for a gift, how do they keep it healthy for the longest period of time?
So the key is to keep it out of absolute direct sunlight. You don't want it to get overly heated up. You want it in a slightly cool place, but certainly indoors. You don't want it to get anywhere near the freezing point. And to keep the soil evenly moist. You don't want it to be soaking wet. You never want to let it completely dry out. Just a nice even moist, you could tell just from the touch of the surface. If it's maintained that way, you should get it through the holiday season and beyond.
Now, can you keep these things growing? You know, some people say, oh, I'm going to keep mine going next June. Can you get it to do the same thing during the following year?
You can. It's quite hard. In all reality, you're more likely you're going to be better off to end up getting something just the next season, just like another annual.
So even though they're grown locally here in Massachusetts or perhaps in the Dakotas, they're actually not from around the United States, are they?
Originally, no. The original poinsettias came out of Mexico. And so if you were to follow back euphorbia, the name, the actual Latin name for poinsettia, it actually comes from Mexico and has been since distributed throughout the world.
So one of the things I've noticed over the past several years is that it used to be just white and red, and now all of a sudden there seems to be many more colors. How are they doing that, and what are some of the things people should look for in terms of names?
So in all reality, what you'll find at the retail level is going to be simply a red or simply a white or something of that nature. There are a lot of different varieties out there, and they're all chosen based on different characteristics. I'm holding in my hand actually what ends up being a prestige red. And the reason we've chosen it for this smaller size pot is it maintains itself a nice compact habit, looks great in a smaller pot. There are others, we can grow much larger pots that are much more aggressive, the habit is much different, much bigger. And then it's, from there it's also a matter of, the bract color. You can get reds, you can get pinks, you can get whites, and even into the novelty things like, marbles and that type of thing. But it almost exclusively deals with the health of the plant and the overall habit and how it grows.
So this particular plant here, even though I see others that are red and larger, it may be a completely different variety. They're both just red.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, they can look exactly the same, from just the size and shape of the bracts. However, the name of the variety and how the thing behaves for us as a grower is completely different.
So talk about being a grower a little bit. How do you guys get these to this state so that they're ready for the holidays?
Well, it actually starts back in July, where we will bring in cuttings without any roots on them at all. We'll root them out ourselves here in the greenhouse, and then they get planted up into various size pots and grown on from there. We try to get enough size onto the plant just before they start to initiate color, and then, about a month ago, you'd start to see a little sprinkling of color through the greenhouse, and now you see what it becomes right now. So here, let me show you a couple of the other varieties that we have around the greenhouse.
Great. So Glenn took us around and we decided to talk about 4 different varieties. So why don't you tell us what we got here?
So what we're looking at here, 4 different colors, obviously. Primarily what would be produced for poinsettias is the regular red. This happens to be a variety called Prestige Red. It's basically what it grows out to is just a nice habit plant, nice size and shape for this pot size. But here on the farm we have 10 different reds based on different pot sizes, different habits that we're trying to achieve, different timing of when the color shows up in the first place. And then once you get outside of the red, you can get into the whites, the pinks, things like the novelties like marble, and then this variety here called Ruby Star, where it's just different speckling on the bracts and things of that nature. This variety here called Winter Sun, it's an earlier white. We have other varieties that come along later like White Star and that type of thing, or a little bit later. It's just trying to have a full selection of plants that'll make their way through the entire season.
I think I'm a traditionalist. I think I just like the white and the red, although these are pretty interesting. And the thing you can see is like this is a cut leaf and this is just a smoother edge. So, the differences in the leaf or the bracts really is noticeable.
Right. And that's all part of it. That's all part of the different varieties and what we'll see. We can get whites that have that cut leaf edge, and we can also get some that have a smooth edge to them. It all depends on what the customer's looking for.
So hopefully this year when you get your plant, it will be well cared for and you'll be able to keep it growing right through the holiday season. Thank you very much, Glenn, and for this edition of Growing Wisdom, I'm Dave Epstein.